What would you say to folks who are saying, well, gold is at its all-time high? If gold goes down, some of these stocks are going to have a bit of a tough time. What would you say to those people? Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And today we have a live in-person interview. I am in the Silver Vault, joined by Joe, Blue Horseshoe Grande, very dear friend of mine, longtime metals investor, mining stock investor, that is going to share his wealth of knowledge with us today and answer the question if it is time to sell those gold and silver stocks. I mean, prices have run up. I mean, they're at their all-time highs, Joe. So maybe you can break it down and say, I know it's not an American thing to do, the buy low, sell high. That's just like on TV for the old folks. But Joe, it's great to be here with you today, and we're in Philadelphia. Nice to stop by and see you. And how are you doing?
Very well, very well. Thank you for having me on. It's nice to be on. I'm usually watching and listening, so being a guest is a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're not always watching and listening, because I saw you had an interview a couple of weeks ago, which I enjoyed listening to. A lot of the folks who go to the mining conferences have met you. And anyway, Joe, why don't you give a little bit of rundown how you first got into gold and silver, and then we'll get to today's theme, but give a little background first.
Sure. First off, I'm a small business owner. I've been a small business owner for about 30 years. And in that, I would just, do my business day to day, work very hard, and I would see what was going on in the so-called real economy, and I would just shake my head and wonder, how long could this craziness last? Here I am having to run my business, doing multiple things on any given day, getting my hands dirty day after day after day, whatever needed to be done. And I watch how they'll just create money on Wall Street and people get fabulously wealthy without doing a whole lot. And I would just shake my head. I'm like, this can't last, very much longer. In 1999, I started investing in gold and silver. I got started paying attention to the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, which I think most of your listeners know who they are. And they put me on they started educating me what's happening in, the real financial world. To start out, I just, invested in gold and silver just to protect myself some. And then I started to see the opportunity, here, how you can make money. In my business, I have to work hard day after day after day to make money. And it's nice to be able to invest in something and over the long term, make money with your mind, not with your hard work. And that's what I seen when I started investing in gold and silver. I think you're asking, is it a good time to sell, the mining stocks? I think it's, probably the worst time to sell them. I think we are at the beginning of probably a generational move in the precious metal mining stocks. And I'd like to spend some time explaining why I think what I think. You may be saying, oh, here's another one of these guys, a gold bug, thinks gold's gone to the moon, Let me just tell you my story a little bit. First off, if you did invest in gold in 1999, it was about $250. And now, which I did, and now, we're now, at 2020, and you made about 7 times your money. So this idea that gold has been a bad investment over the years is just not valid. It's definitely not valid. And you can say, you can make the argument, well, silver hasn't done that, Joe, and you can make a good argument for that. But we did have, a large run up, which was pulled back. And if you understand why it pulled back, I think the argument that silver has been a bad investment is not a very valid argument.
Joe, why did it pull back?
Well, let's get into that now. Let's get into that. Why do I think gold and silver, precious metal mining stocks are the investment of a lifetime? The reason why is because they have always been the barometer of an unhealthy economy. And the powers that be know that, understand that. So for them to have their money machine work, they must, hold down the price of gold and silver artificially. Years ago, they were never able to do that because they're the physical metals, and in the natural laws of economics, that's why they were used They were used to keep the printing money in check, so you couldn't have governments go crazy. When they went crazy printing money, gold and silver would take off. So, they started using paper contracts to hold the price of gold and silver down. And the people at the Gold Antitrust Action Committee have done fabulous work explaining how that occurred.
Although, Joe, I've been told recently that anyone who thinks that gold and silver are suppressed is a conspiracy theory nut job lunatic.
So I guess
am I a nut job lunatic? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I will say this.
Well, we'll leave me aside and let's stick to people who think gold is suppressed.
I will say this. Let's talk about some investments that have done fabulous over the course of recent history. Facebook, Google, things like that. The average person that's watching right now, did you have an opportunity to buy those stocks? Did you have an opportunity to make an ungodly amount of money investing in those stocks? Most likely you didn't. That was for the insiders. The insiders made the money on that. Okay, guys like us don't get those opportunities. But I think what we have with the precious metal mining stocks is we have that opportunity, the opportunity of a generation to make money like you cannot imagine. I'm very biased. I'll be totally honest with you. I am talking my book right now. I'm talking my book. But realize that I made my living 30 years running a business. I've done this as a second business. So I know how to judge a good investment and a bad investment. And, I'm not in every good investment in the world. So there's other good investments that I haven't found. I will tell you that. But I think you can make a very good argument why the precious metal mining stocks are the investment of a generation. So as they've printed money, over and over and over again, we have a normalcy bias. We think that's normal. And things continue to go on and on and on. And people say, okay, well, this can go on forever. It can't go on forever. At some point in time, things are going to correct. And they've already started to correct. Why has gold gone from 250 in 1999 to approximately 1900 right now? Because smart money understands what's happening and they continue to buy it. And during the course of that, going from 250 to 1900, how many times have they thrown paper gold on the market to suppress the price? They've done it not, dozens of times. They've done it hundreds of times. I've watched it over and over and over again. It's very, very well documented. So the question becomes, can they do that forever? The reason why they can't do that forever, and why I think we're getting to the end of it, and why I think we're getting to the investment of a generation, is because they're running out of physical gold and silver. Chris talks very often about what's happening on the comics. He has a lot of guests educating us that they are running out of physical gold and silver. We just don't know when it's going to end. You can make the argument, well, Joe, you may be real early. This may not happen for a year or 2 years or 3 years. You may be right. You may be right. And I'm very comfortable just waiting that time to be in a position to make the money that I think I'm going to make. Chris also said, the stocks that are all-time high. Right now, the Huey, which is the index for gold and silver mining stocks, I believe it's around 340. In 2011, when gold got to 1930, the Huey was over 600. So we're nowhere near, Chris, and nowhere near the highs. As a matter of fact, we're very close to the lows. We're not that far off. It's a wonderful, wonderful time to invest in these stocks. You have to be able to handle the risk, though. And, you're going to find, in our sector, there's a lot of people out there, selling the next big thing. You got to be very careful. I compare it to the 90s when the internet stocks. Those of you who are my age lived through it. And Chris tells me I'm the old guy. He's the young guy. During that time, you would have the big internet stock, the pet food stock. They would come out with this thing and it would go from, $1 to $50 in a matter of days or weeks or months. And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen with the gold and silver stocks. But what happened back then was the companies that were not real end up crashing and you never made any money. You may have made paper money, but if you didn't get out properly, you never really made money. So what you have to do when you're investing in these stocks, you have to be in good stocks. Don't be just in stocks that, have gold and silver in their name. They may take off when gold and silver take off. And on paper, you may make some money, but if you're not smart enough to get out to time the market perfectly, you're not going to make any money. You're probably going to lose money, and a lot of it. I've never been smart enough to, time it like that. I like to buy good, solid investments and just sit back and let them do their thing over time. And over time, you make money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Joe. Although one clarification, when I said at all-time highs, I was referring to the gold price, which, okay, we've gone from $35 in 71. I think we calculated when I was interviewing Franzler this morning, a 55x multiple. So to the degree that, at a higher gold price, we saw even Warren Buffett hopping in and buying Barrick Gold. What would you say to folks who are saying, well, gold is at its all-time high? If gold goes down, some of these stocks are going to have a bit of a tough time. What would you say to those people?
I will say this, that, if you buy, good, solid silver and gold mining stocks, the risk you're taking is gold and silver going down. If you don't believe in it, you shouldn't invest in these stocks. They won't do well. If you think gold is going to go from 1900 to 1500 or 1300, you shouldn't invest in these stocks. I'm convinced that the gold and silver price are going to do fabulous. So you say, why don't you just buy more gold and silver physical, Joe? Well, the reason why is because you get better leverage with the mining stocks. Now, you have to buy good mining stocks. But just think of it in these terms right now. The market cap of Apple is approximately $2 trillion. One company all by itself is $2 trillion. The market cap of like the top 50 mining companies in the world, not just gold and silver, the top 50 mining companies in the world is like $1 trillion. Okay. So you have massive upside. Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway just bought a $500 million position in Barrick Gold, which is the biggest or second biggest gold mining company in the world. And it was like trivial to them. It was like 0.5% of their investable dollars, 0.25%. It was next to nothing. When people start to move into these mining stocks, they are going to move like you cannot imagine. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, do you believe gold and silver are going to do well? That's the first question you have to ask yourself. And if you believe that, then, of course, I would, advise you to definitely buy some physical gold and silver. But I would also advise you, for a certain amount of your portfolio, whatever works for you with your, getting your investment advice from the advisors you have, you put a percentage that would make sense. You can, my opinion, strictly my opinion, I see this as the greatest money-making opportunity of my generation. And you say, well, Joe, you had the internet stocks in your generation. Well, I never had the opportunity to get in the ground floor of these stocks. That was for the big guys. I never got in Facebook and Google. I never had that opportunity. So now I'm just an average guy. I have an opportunity that, just like anybody else has, as a matter of fact, I'm ahead of them. I'm ahead of most people as far as I could see it. I'll give you an example. Excuse me for looking at my notes. There's a company called Sabina Gold, and I'm very biased. I've been in it for 5 years. The market cap of this company is $650 million US. Sprout Equity just did a little write-up on it, and they called it the best undeveloped gold asset globally with a mix of size and grade not seen in peers. So here you are, normally a guy like me would have no opportunity to get a nice position in this stock before the big guys. But these stocks are so unpopular that, people like us are able to buy them. We're able to buy good, solid companies, cheap. Yeah, they may have ran up, this year a nice amount, but in the scheme of things, you can't look at it that way. Look at it as, if they keep printing money the way they're printing money, the whole world is going to say, they're already saying it, this is crazy. We have to protect ourselves. And, I have, $10 billion I'm managing. Doesn't make sense for me to take 5% of that or 10% or 20% of that and put it in gold and silver and the corresponding mining stocks. Yes. So right now, if you take all the investable dollars in the world, about 1% of them are in, gold, silver, and the mining stocks. So you only need that number to go from 1% to, I don't know, 2, 3, and everything. These mining stocks just go crazy. They just go crazy. I'm going to go back to Sabina. On an average day, it trades 750,000 shares. It trades approximately at $2 a share right now. So it's about $1.5 million. You buy the whole volume for the day. So this is one of the preeminent, gold stories that is going to be bought out by the big guys. It's top 10, no ifs, ands, or buts. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, if not even better than top 10. So you have somebody who wants to buy a position and they manage, 50 million, 100 million, 200 million. They can't buy a position. They can't buy the position. The only way they're going to be able to buy a position is they're going to have to, just push the pricing up dramatically, where they're going to have to get involved in a lot of these companies that are very early on, that are very risky to buy big, huge positions in them. What we have right now, before the craziness has started, is we have an opportunity to take a step back, to say, okay, we have common sense. We know the financial system of America and the world is not stable. So we're going to protect ourselves. We're going to invest in gold and silver and the mining stocks, and we're going to do it early. And we're going to buy these, and then we're just going to sit back and be patient. Just sit back and be patient.
Yeah, and I think the patience is really the key to not just gold, silver, mining stocks, but maybe to everything in life. So what have you learned along those 20 years? Because there have been some periods that have required incredible patience. Maybe that's just the way life trains us to develop certain skills. But obviously, there are a lot of people out there that are saying, I'm tired of hearing about manipulation, bank stuffing, paper contracts. It's never going to end, or it's going to keep going, or I don't have the patience. What would you say to them?
I would say to them that, first off, I'm a human being, and I wish I knew exactly how everything's going to unfold. I don't know. But I am a business person with common sense. And when you lose the rule of law, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in society today. So basically, over the summer, we had massive rioting in the cities, and law enforcement didn't do very much. So there was basically a loss of law and order. So I'm reading today, and I read today in San Francisco, where 3 Walgreens are closing because what was happening is people were walking in the stores and they were just with trash bags and they were just shoplifting en masse, and nobody was stopping them. So basically, in San Francisco, in that area of the city, I don't know how big it is, but in that area of the city, you basically have no law and order, and business ceases to function. Okay. So now you take that and you take that to our financial system, the same thing. So now Trump is, negotiating with the Democrats. Are we going to create $2 trillion out of thin air? Or are we going to create, 1.9 trillion? Okay. You can only do that for so long. And at some point in time, people are going to say it's enough. You don't know when it's going to be enough. So you could wait for that moment. When you wait for that moment, you're like the masses. It's too late. It's too late. You're going to be, you're hurt dramatically financially, most people. Well, if you were smart enough to figure this out, if you're smart enough to listen to, Chris's show on a consistent basis and people like him, then there's something wrong. So then, you have to figure out, okay, what's the best way to deal with this? And, definitely, the mining stocks, as I'm talking about, is a good thing. And you say, well, Joe, a lot of people say this can go on forever. Well, if you buy good companies, you don't have to worry about being right tomorrow. And right now, where the price of gold is, if gold's at 1900, so many of these mining companies have all-in sustaining costs of less than 1,000. So they're making good money. So you can buy the Franco-Nevadas, the Royal Golds of the world, the Barracks of the world, Kirkland Lake. You could buy these big companies where there's very little risk. You can get in and out of them very quickly, and you're protecting yourself. And if you're wrong, you're not going to get killed. You're not going to get killed. So to me, it's not when it's going to happen. It's not if it's going to happen. It's when it's going to happen. And you just have to be patient, and you have to realize, that I think a lot of people that are just finding these investments now are kind of lucky, believe it or not. I've been doing this for 20 years. And although I've done very well over those 20 years, I'm not going to complain. I really, sat through some very difficult times. As a matter of fact, Chris makes fun of me. In March, I was really feeling good in myself. My portfolio was through the roof, and they just kept hitting gold and silver over and over and over again. And they pushed, the pricing down dramatically. And my portfolio really got slaughtered. And it wasn't a pleasant feeling, and one day I had a little too many gummy bears in my frustration, and it wasn't healthy for me. And, to this day.
To explain, gummy bears are your coping mechanism when the price gets screwed.
It was that one day, but Chris doesn't let me forget it.
I just check in to make sure if silver's down $2 that you're not at Walgreens with the garbage bag clearing out the gummy bag rack.
So I will say to you, the one thing, what did I learn over the years? I learned that you have to be in good companies. And if you get some of these newsletters that are based on these exploration companies where you think you're going to make 10 times your money, 20 times your money, 50 times your money, it's very, very risky. I will say, work with professionals. There's a lot of good funds that manage money properly for these stocks that can do it much better than you. If you're experienced, I think right now it's just a fantastic time to search out these stocks like Sabina and just buy them and then just sit tight. I have a couple contacts. I have an account at Schwab and an account at Fidelity, and my contacts there, the one guy said to me, he says, "Joe, I've seen you done pretty well." He goes, "But I don't know how you sleep at night." And I said to him, to be honest with you, I don't know how you sleep at night. I sleep just fine. I know what's going to happen. I may be early, but I know what's going to happen. I know I'm in good companies. Now I just have to be patient, let things unfold.
Joe, how would you feel if there was some bizarre world circumstance, or maybe, I don't know, this could be the policy of whoever's president in a couple of weeks. You talk about sleeping at night. What if you had to take all of your mining stocks and you just had to own treasuries? I mean, to me, that's what is. It's like I'm not worried about boogeyman or terrorist. I mean, geez, that is a scary one.
That is scary. I mean, what you have to realize now that we've been able to print dollars as much as we want in America and send them across the world, and they've accepted them because dollars are the reserve currency of the world, and it's much stronger than most other currencies. But even then, they're starting to look at what's happening and saying, okay, the American economy, is shut down in a dramatic way with COVID. Although it's coming back, it's still going to be very difficult. It's going to be impossible not to have massive bankruptcies in the leisure and hospitality industry. And, so revenues are going to go down for every level of government. So how are these institutions going to survive? A big part of it is going to be the federal government printing money. They're the only people that can print it. State governments can't print it. Local governments can't print it. So, no matter who's president, Donald Trump, no matter Joe Biden, no matter if you're Republican or Democrat, there's going to be a ton of money printed, and it's not going to stop for a long, long time. So, we may be wrong on timing, and gold may not take off for another year or two or three, but eventually it will. And when it does, if you don't have a certain amount of investments in these sectors, it's going to be very difficult to survive it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Joe, that was the last thing I wanted to run by you. Does it matter to the gold price which person is elected president?
To me, that's something that I think you can think this stuff to death, and I don't think that's the way you should invest. I think you should invest and you just look at the overall fiscal situation of our country. A lot of people say, well, if Joe Biden gets elected, they're going to do a lot more, money printing. I don't know. Donald Trump's done a lot of that himself. And I think with everything that's going on with COVID, I don't see how that stops. And I don't see how it stops across the world. They're having more problems in Europe with COVID. So their economy is not doing well at all. So they're going to have to print more money. So it's just a matter of, the only thing that can prove, me wrong, us wrong, is if the idea that gold and silver are the things that people turn to when things start to get crazy fiscally. If that ends, if that's no longer the case, then we will be wrong. But I do think that they've been, they've been what they are for thousands of years. And I think they're going to continue to be the same thing. And I have the utmost confidence in that. But, whatever you do investment wise, just make sure you're able to sleep at night. If it's something that, really concerns you and bothers you, don't go overboard. Don't go overboard, because, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult to survive what's going to happen fiscally in our country and world moving forward. You don't want to put yourself in a position that you take on debt, or you put your savings in an unsafe position where it adds more risk to what the world's already going to give you.
Well, Joe, I certainly agree with that, and appreciate you joining me here today to talk about gold and silver. And it's going to be a fascinating time. And I guess we'll see what the world chooses, whether they go for the negative yielding treasuries or the inflation hedge assets like gold, silver, and mining stocks. So, Joe, Blue Horseshoe Grande, thank you for joining me. And folks at home, well, if you want to know what Denver Dave Kranzler had to say about it on this week's Silver and Gold Market Update, well, that is coming your way now.